What's going on, guys, and welcome back to my Friday Night SmackDown review for Friday, June 5th, 2020. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well. And it's quite refreshing to be back here on the SmackDown audio reviews, doing positive reviews of the show for a change. For the first time, and probably since I started doing these audio reviews right here on the channel back in October. I've said many times before, over the last 6, 7, 8 months, that SmackDown has just been a chore to watch, more often than not on Friday nights on Fox. The show just really hasn't been all that good, but for whatever reason, this week, last week, and even the week before that, were all very good episodes of SmackDown. By recent SmackDown standards, the Blue brand has been better now than it has been in at least a year. At least 1 year. So, I thought this was a good show. Not everything was great. We'll just get it out of the way right off the bat. The Miz and Morrison trash was fucking terrible. Them trying to make Braun Strowman's life a living hell by destroying his car and everything else was just not good. You know, the timing is one thing. I didn't see a lot of people talking about this, probably because it's really not that big of a deal. But, you know, I know they filmed this stuff for those, you know, anyone who may be wondering, which doesn't seem like the overwhelming majority here. But, you know, I was watching these segments, specifically with the destroying of Braun Strowman's car. When they went over to his car, you know, just trashed it, and then were tipped over in the van by Braun. When they destroyed the car, it seemed a bit odd, just with everything going on in the world right now. You know, with the whole, you know, really everything, but the destroying of you know, property and cars, which everyone has their opinions on and everything else. But it just, the timing of it for right now when they're destroying the car, when everything else is going on at the moment, just seems strange. But again, it wasn't like, oh my god, I'm offended, they should have cut that out, blah, blah, blah. You know, there obviously wasn't an intention to do that on purpose. Because again, the show was filmed a week ago. That was really when things started up, before they got a lot worse than they were. So again, I don't really, it didn't really bother me, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Didn't even, you know, even not even acknowledging that, putting that aside, the segments were just bad anyway. I like Miz, I like Morrison, Braun is, you know, I like Braun. The World Championship reign hasn't really been lighting the world on fire, but I never really expected it to, so I'm not surprised. The Bray Wyatt match of Money in the Bank was a bit better than I thought it would be. And for those wondering, by the way, I mean, I figured they probably should have held off on Bray and Braun 2 until SummerSlam anyway, or the July pay-per-view or whatever. But the reason they may be doing it later on and not right now, I think might be because, if it wasn't already a storyline thing, was because Bray just had his second kid. Him and JoJo having their second child in literally 1 year. They had their first child, 6 Nash, or I think it's Nash 6 Rotunda. I forgot what the baby's name was, but they had their first child together last May, and they had their second child literally last month, in May of 2020. So JoJo she must have gotten pregnant, and my math adds up here, 3 months after they had the first baby. That's insane. So that's probably why we haven't seen JoJo back on WWE TV at all, because I don't think anyone heard anything about this. I don't think anyone knew, you know, for you know, as far as fans go, that JoJo is pregnant again. So congrats to them, but that might be why Bray Wyatt's not currently on the show. Which is totally okay, because again, I think they should have held off on doing Bray and Braun until SummerSlam, or at least the July pay-per-view anyway, just to space it out, just to give, you know, Braun more time as champion before he hopefully drops it right back to The Fiend or Bray or whoever. But Miz and Morrison in this spot just feels forced. I mean, they literally are coming off a loss of the SmackDown Tag Team Championship no more than a month or two ago. This feels forced, like they have no other players to really insert into that spot. Roman's out right now. Sami Zayn's gone. Not that they would put Sami Zayn in the spot, but hey, Sami and Braun were feuding a couple of months ago, and Braun and Sami never were able to really finish off their feud. Sami pinned Braun to win the Intercontinental Championship back in March, and that was the end of that. So quite honestly, it's not a match that really compels me, but from a storyline standpoint, let's say Sami had dropped the championship to whoever in the last 2 months if he was still around. They could have put Sami in this spot and do Braun and Sami at the Backlash pay-per-view. That at least would make more sense and would be somewhat more interesting than Miz and Morrison in a fucking handicap match, because you know they're not winning. If anything, this may very well lead to them splitting up, which I hope doesn't happen. It's too soon. Their championship reign was kind of cut short at a little less than 2 months. Anyway, but it's not interesting. The segments have sucked. Braun beating Miz in like 3 minutes a couple of weeks ago did nothing to make me want to see them go for the championship or to try to beat Braun at the pay-per-view. It's not working. Other than that, though, I thought the show was very good. Unfortunately, those segments dominated a majority of the show. But I thought overall, it was a pretty good show. The Matt Riddle vignette, we had another vignette for the impending debut of Matt Riddle on SmackDown. There was a rumor going around either earlier this week or right after SmackDown last week that I think Kurt Angle was pegged to be his manager on the show. But I think he turned it down, which, as great of a pairing as that would be, and it was cool to see Riddle in the ring with Angle, on NXT last week in the main event with the fight, the fight pit and whatever. I just don't know if it would be a great fit. I think it would be cool to see them together, but Riddle doesn't need a mouthpiece, doesn't really need a manager. He's a guy that can thrive on his own. And it would be great to see Angle back. I mean, I'm sure Angle will be re-signed. At this point, we've seen him so much on WWE TV recently, between the SmackDown appearance last week. We've heard from him. He was on NXT last week as well. I'm sure he will re-sign after they released him from his Legends deal or whatever last year, his agent role. I'm sure he will be back. But I'm not sure making him the manager for Matt Riddle would have been the right idea. Honestly, if you want to make Kurt Angle a manager, Matt Riddle may not be the best guy for that role, but Chad Gable would be. And I mean, I'm not the only one that has been saying this. People have been saying this for literally years now. Angle and Gable is a match made in heaven. How they have not done that yet, I have no idea. I know they had a match on Raw right before Angle retired last year, which was cool, but they gotta become an on-air permanent pairing. I think that just makes too much sense. And now Gable could do well on his own, but I just want to see Angle confront Shorty G, whatever the fuck, on SmackDown one of these nights and one of these weeks and say, listen, dude, you gotta drop the Shorty G bullshit. You gotta go back to your amateur wrestling roots and be the badass that I know you can be. And then really motivate Gable. And he's on a winning streak anyway. He beat Cesaro last week. He won a 6-man tag team match alongside New Day on this show against Cesaro, Nakamura, and Mojo Rawley, which I'll get to later. But yeah, it makes sense. So they're kind of focusing on him now, and it would be better than the Shorty G bullshit. I mean, really anything would be better than that, to be honest, but having Angle become Gable's new manager, I think would be awesome. So that was something that I was thinking about a couple of days ago. But yeah, to kick off the actual show, we had Sheamus attacking Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy came out to offer an explanation for what happened last week, saying that he had no idea what happened. He was driving his car to the arena, got out, was attacked from behind by someone with red hair and a red beard, according to nearby witnesses. Now, could it be a red herring, literally, with it being Sami Zayn and not Sheamus? Because otherwise, why wouldn't have fans said that we're around the incident, around the crime scene, so to speak, not just say Sheamus? Why wouldn't they just say Sheamus? Why would they hint at it being Sheamus with the red hair and the red beard? Is it to avoid him being arrested? Because quite honestly, with everything that happened on this show and last week between Sheamus apparently being a part of this hit and run of Elias, and then blaming it on Jeff Hardy, and then Miz and Morrison trashing Braun Strowman's vehicle this past week, how are none of these people getting arrested? With everything going on right now and all the peaceful protesting and people getting arrested for dumb reasons and all the bullshit in the world right now, it's so sad to see, and you got to stay positive. But with everyone else getting arrested right now for such dumb reasons, why haven't Miz, Morrison, and Sheamus been arrested? That's my question. Maybe that's why they did that, to make it more logical, because I guess if they said Sheamus, then he would have to be arrested, but no one ever really gets arrested in WWE storylines. I mean, there's been attempted murder, and no one ever really, they barely get a slap on the wrist. I mean, people do get arrested, quote-unquote, but then they escape jail somehow later that night. You know what I mean? So, anyway, I thought this was a good segment. Anyway, back to the Sami Zayn thing real quick. I forgot to mention that, or I did, but I didn't really, expand upon it. With the Sami Zayn thing, could it be a literal red herring? Could it be Sami and not Sheamus, and they had, maybe Sheamus hired Sami? That would make no sense to me. Sheamus is already feuding with Jeff. He wants to see him back behind bars, out of the Intercontinental Championship mix. I mean, Jeff should get another shot because he was wrongfully arrested last week, was not involved in the tournament despite advancing a couple of weeks ago. So he should get another shot, but that's besides the point. So yeah, with Sami Zayn, it would make no sense. Sami was previously the Intercontinental Champion. I know Jeff was in the tournament, but what makes Jeff so special more so than Daniel Bryan or whoever, who he was already feuding with a couple of months ago? So I think Sami Zayn would just be random. If Jeff was like the Intercontinental Champion, then maybe, but it would just be a weird way of bringing back Sami. I don't know if we're going to be seeing him anytime soon. I know the whole COVID thing is kind of dying down a little bit, not all the way, obviously. I feel like it might be a little while before we see him again. But I thought this was a good segment, though. Sheamus laying out Jeff Hardy at the top of the stage, throwing him into the plexiglass, which was cool. Made for a great visual. Makes you a little worried that the plexiglass is not in all the way. So when fans do come back, hopefully they're a bit more stringent with the plexiglass than they were on this show. Like, he threw Jeff into it and the thing almost collapsed. It's like, hopefully it's a little more sturdy than it was here going forward with fans. But I thought it was a good segment. We are getting Jeff and Sheamus at the Backlash pay-per-view next weekend, which is exactly what I expected. And I'm looking forward to it. My early prediction is Sheamus, just because Jeff Hardy won that first match. Unless they're really going full throttle with this Jeff push, and they want to push him towards the main event or the Intercontinental Championship mix, because if AJ Styles wins next week, which I do expect him to win, I do expect him to do, you could do Jeff and AJ at the July pay-per-view. That would be pretty cool. I would extend the Sheamus and Jeff feud a little beyond the Backlash show, so I would have Sheamus. Sheamus needs a big win. He's been squashing a lot of losers. He's beaten Apollo Crews and Shorty G. I mean, none of that shit really means anything. Squashing Performance Center recruits and whatnot. He needs a big win. I would have him beat Jeff and then do the rubber match maybe at the July Extreme Rules pay-per-view. Assuming they're still doing the Extreme Rules pay-per-view in July, because that's what it was last year and the year before. But they could very well change the pay-per-view calendar as they did with Backlash. Backlash we've not seen in several years. At least 2 or 3 years. And I think last year in the June slot, it was Stomping Grounds, I think, and that really died, quickly died a death. And the show was actually pretty good, but the name sucked. So anyway, also in the show, we had King Corbin and Otis, after Otis tried to wear the King's crown backstage on the show. It felt like a really rushed build-up. Like, I would advertise this a week in advance. Not that it would make anyone go out of their way to watch SmackDown to see Corbin versus Otis, but it's a feud to me that makes sense, because Otis recently wrapped up his rivalry with Dolph Ziggler. Thankfully, they moved on from that. Corbin's not doing anything right now. He is an upper echelon heel. You can like the guy, you can hate the guy. He's an upper mid-card heel. So quite honestly, it just makes sense to do this feud. The matches will not light the world on fire, but it's a good spot for Otis to be in, just because I don't know where the hell Tucker went. They were joking, I think I said here on the show 2 or 3 weeks ago, or maybe in my SmackDown review, that they were like, oh, he had the shits, blah, 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 and that's why he hasn't been on the show for the last month. I mean, that was, if he's still having the shits now, and that's why he's not on the show, the guy's got to go see a doctor, because that's concerning. I miss Tucker, I miss Heavy Machinery, but it is cool to see Otis on his own. Mandy Rose looking good as always, alongside Otis, and we did see Mandy a little later on in the night, which I'll get to momentarily with the whole Sonya Lacey Evans match. But yeah, I think it makes sense. The match was all right. Corbin got himself disqualified, which was bullshit, but you could build to a rematch either at the pay-per-view or next week, whatever. It's a good way to keep both guys busy. It could give Otis a big win if he beats Corbin, as Elias did at WrestleMania. And I've been saying, people asked me this past week, who do you see being Matt Riddle's first feud on SmackDown? Corbin makes sense. I interviewed Matt Riddle about a month ago when he said, I have unfinished business with Corbin from the Royal Rumble, from Survivor Series. So that would make sense. It's not the most exciting feud, so maybe not Corbin. I think Nakamura would make more sense, even though he also doesn't really mean much right now, but the matches could be better than Riddle and Corbin. Anyway, this was fine. I had no issue with this. We had Lacey Evans and Sonya Part 2 after their awesome match last week. This was equally entertaining. For whatever reason, Sonya and Lacey work really, really well together. I thought this was another great match. They didn't get a ton of time, nor did they last week, but they made the most. They maximized their minutes. They had a really good match. Sonya lost. I was going to say Sonya won. She actually lost after a distraction finish with Mandy Rose appearing on the big screen and saying, oh, this isn't over. I want you one. I don't know if she said, I want you one-on-one again. That just sounds wrong. Or right, depending on your perspective. But she did say something along the lines of, like, I'm going to get you back, bitch, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if she said bitch, which Sonya has made her catchphrase over the last number of months in this feud with Mandy. I love everything about Sonya right now. It's not a Sonya issue, but these women and the guys too. Roman does it a lot. They got to stop with the whole bitch thing. Like, oh, it's edgy. They said bitch. When done, the right way and not feeling forced, it's a great little one-liner to throw in there. But when it's said literally every single week, then it just doesn't really mean anything at all. How is the show PG if they're getting away with saying bitch on the show every single week? I know Disney Channel shows were probably rated G. Some of them have got to be rated PG, right? I have not seen Disney Channel in over a decade, but would you be watching Disney Channel or Nickelodeon with your kids, watching a PG show like SpongeBob, and then you hear Patrick say bitch? Like, I don't think so. I never remember Patrick saying bitch on the show. So I mean, again, I know it's not Nickelodeon, it's not Disney Channel, nor should it be, but there's no reason, not even from like a rating standpoint, but just it's not necessary. I'm not saying that she said it on the show. I don't think she did, but just something I've noticed, and I'm not the only one. But again, this match was great. Lacey has improved a lot. She's not like the second coming of Trish Stratus or whatever, but she is really, really good. Sonya has been fucking killing it all around on the, in the ring, on the mic, ever since she broke away from Mandy. I mean, they really should have broke these two up a while ago if this was going to be the case. Where has this Sonya been the last year or two? She's really, really good. I was a little disappointed that she lost here, but, it made sense. The whole distraction finish, I'm not a big fan of it. It feels like every cliche bullshit finish ever in this company, but it was all right. Sonya did attack, Lacey before the bell, adding to that intensity, I thought overall this was a great piece of business, and I'm really happy with what Sonya and Mandy and, specifically Lacey as well have been doing the last couple of weeks in these matches. I don't know if they built a Sonya and Mandy next week. Probably not. They didn't announce it, I don't think, but they could always announce it for the Backlash pay-per-view, and that would make sense. Backlash should be all about the blood feuds and the intense rivalries and whatnot, and that is an intense feud Mandy and Sonya has been for a while, and I quite enjoyed their first match, so I am hoping a rematch is in the works for the Backlash show next weekend. We also had on the show a face-to-face between Daniel Bryan and AJ Styles. Great stuff here, great mic work from both men. Renee Young mediating the meeting here. I thought this was quite good. That did lead immediately into AJ Styles versus Drew Gulak. After AJ brought up Gulak and how he's been a teacher for Bryan and their relationship, blah, blah, blah. I liked how they made the Intercontinental Championship feel important again. And it's not all of a sudden a prestigious prize, just because they're like, oh, it means a lot to me. It's going to take a lot more than a few promos to make that thing mean something again. Because when it was around Sami's waist, Braun's waist, Nakamura's waist, Balor's waist, really for the last year and a half, ever since Rollins dropped it a year and a half ago, that belt has meant next to nothing. So, Alexis, when we were watching the show last night, literally forgot what the belt looked like, because we have never seen it. We have not seen that belt. We watched WrestleMania and Sami held it, but you never really see the belt anymore. Putting aside recently since Mania with the whole Sami Zayn thing, we haven't really seen the belt at all. When Nakamura held it and all these other people, they were barely either on the show. They didn't win a lot. You would never really see much of that beautiful-looking championship. Now, I do prefer the original design, personally, but it's still a great-looking championship. So anyway, it's going to take a lot more than the promos to make that championship mean something, but this is a step in the right direction. So AJ brings up Gulak. That leads immediately into Styles and Gulak on the show after Gulak makes a beeline towards the ring, lays out AJ. They have a very good match, as you would expect. Very well wrestled. And Gulak wins with a roll-up. That very much surprised me. It was a great finish. Very cool moment for Gulak, who literally went from being unemployed like 2 or 3 weeks ago to now beating AJ Styles on SmackDown. What a turnaround. The guy wasn't fired, so to speak. He was, he let his contract lapse. Technically wasn't under contract anymore after that Daniel Bryan match 2 or 3 weeks ago. And now he's, back on SmackDown. And not only back on SmackDown, but beating AJ Styles. That doesn't change my prediction. If anything, it only really enhances my prediction that AJ's winning that Intercontinental Championship next week. And then we could probably see AJ and Gulak as the first feud for that champion. Not the first feud, but I don't know if AJ would do an open challenge, but we could see AJ and Gulak as the first title match, maybe on an episode of SmackDown coming out of next week's show. Maybe either, it could be a Backlash. There's a last-minute matchup. Who knows? But I really think, both guys, you really can't go wrong with either Bryan or Styles as the Intercontinental Champion. But with AJ, you have, Matt Riddle coming in. AJ and Matt Riddle could be fucking awesome. I said the same thing about AJ and Ricochet. And they had some good matches that never really lived up to their full potential, and then the feud died out and we never saw Ricochet again. But still, I think that would be a great feud. AJ and Riddle just makes sense to me. You could do him and Bryan, continue that feud, continue that program. AJ and Gulak, like I said. You could do AJ and Jeff Hardy, as I mentioned earlier. That could be a really fun feud. You have, I'm trying to think who else. Him and, Elias, they never really got to have their match. Not really a feud that lights the world on fire for me, but it's all right. Roman Reigns when he comes back, who will likely be positioned towards the Universal Championship picture, but it's still an idea. There's a lot of options there with AJ as the Intercontinental Champion, maybe even more so than Bryan, because if Bryan wins it, you could do him and Corbin, which is a fresh feud, and they worked well together a couple of weeks ago on SmackDown, about a month ago. You could do him and Sheamus, but I feel like that's been done to death. Him and Ziggler's been done to death. Who else is on that show? Again, him and AJ again, maybe. I don't know. I feel like him and Riddle, but it's two baby faces. So him and Gulak would be two baby faces. Him and Miz been done to death. Maybe Morrison. I don't know. I feel like AJ, there's a lot more options there. And, you could go back to him and Kofi, potentially, if Kofi breaks away from the tag team title picture at some point. There's a lot more options there with AJ as champion. And Bryan never really got a fair run with the championship 5 years ago. He'll win it back eventually. But I think AJ's the right choice right now. He just came back to SmackDown. He desperately needs a big win. He needs something. This guy is not literally... I know this match isn't taking place at Backlash, but the guy has not won a match on pay-per-view since October, I think. Since the Crown Jewel pay-per-view on Halloween. He lost at Survivor Series. He wasn't at TLC. Lost in the Royal Rumble match. Wasn't at Fastlane. Lost at the Super Showdown show. He lost at Elimination Chamber to Aleister Black. Lost at WrestleMania to The Undertaker, failed to win the Money in the Bank briefcase and Money in the Bank, and he still feels like a star because AJ Styles is like bulletproof basically at this point in terms of booking. Not that you should just parade the guy around like a clown, but he can absorb some losses, but he needs a win, and I think this is it. So then we go to the aforementioned six-man tag team match, The New Day and Shorty G, Chad Gable, beating Shinsuke Nakamura, Cesaro, Mojo Rawley. Really not much to it. It was a fine match. Honestly, I forgot Mojo Rawley was even employed. We have not seen him on the show since I think before WrestleMania. They moved him from Raw to SmackDown quite quietly to kind of go along with Gronk being on the show. And obviously that was short-lived. Gronk lost the 24/7 championship, I think, this past week. And so we will not be seeing Gronk back in WWE anytime soon. So it's kind of a waste to move Mojo, but now he's away from his home on Main Event over on the Raw brand, but whatever. I mean, this was a fine use of him, just because I don't know if he got pinned, but I think Cesaro may have gotten pinned. Maybe it was Rawley, I don't remember, it doesn't really matter, but, he lost here, whatever. The guy does absolutely nothing for me. I'm not advocating for anyone to lose their job, but for him to still be around when there were so many other talented people that were let go in that latest round of releases, I'll never know. Like EC3, they never even really gave a shit about at all, and he might be better off elsewhere. But they never even tried with him. Mojo Rawley, they've tried at least 4 or 5 times. Between his time in NXT, the Hype Bros, coming to the main roster with Zack Ryder, being on his own, on Raw, on SmackDown, no one gives a fuck. Really, honestly, no one gives a fuck about Mojo Rawley, it seems. Seems like a good guy, but in the ring, he does nothing. Hasn't really improved all that much in the last 5 years, in my opinion. So, I'm not really sure what trying to focus on him accomplishes. Thankfully, Gable won here, so they're the one they're going with. But with Rawley, why are they still trying with him when you have an EC, or you did have an EC3, or people like that? It just makes no sense to me. And then the main event, which I forgot to mention earlier, I forgot all about this, I don't know how I could. Bayley and Sasha Banks beating Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross to win the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. Very surprising, another very surprising result on the show. Could have done without the roll-up just because we saw that with the Gulak AJ match. A lot of roll-ups this week, because they watched 205 Live after this, and those matches ended up in roll-ups too. I don't know how or why or whatever, but Isaiah Swerve Scott beat Jack Gallagher with a roll-up, and then Oney Lorcan beat Tahuti Miles with a roll-up too. So, anyway, they're roll-up crazy right now for whatever reason. But this was a very good match, better than I thought it would be. Very, some nice moments. They worked well together, kept the pace moving, good stuff. In the end, it was Bayley knocking off Alexa Bliss, knocking her off the apron at ringside. I think Nikki Cross had Sasha in a submission, or I think Sasha had Nikki Cross in the submission. Nikki rolls her up. Sasha reverses that into a roll-up of her own to win the WWE Women's Tag Team titles for a second time. Now, they aren't the first 2-time tag team champions. That would be Alexa and Nikki, having won them last year and now at WrestleMania. But with Bliss and Banks, remember, they lost the tag team titles back at WrestleMania. last year, which I thought was a dumb call. The Iconics were losers. They were losers going into that match. They were losers coming out of that match. I thought it was the wrong call to have them win that championship. Banks and Bayley had a lot more left in the tank as tag team champions. They teased going down to NXT, and they never did. And hey, I just said this recently on Twitter, but I think it'd be awesome to see Sasha and Bayley, now that they're the new tag team champions. Alexa and Bliss in NXT, who cares? But Sasha and Bayley being back in NXT, albeit for a brief bit, as the tag team champions. I'm not really sure who they would defend against. Maybe Tegan Nox and Shotzi Blackheart, who knows? That could be fun. But I think that's a great idea since they're filming the shows at the PC anyway. They're all there. They're flying all these people out, I think, to do these shows. They're not staying in Orlando unless they live there, which a majority of the talent does. But why not have Sasha and Bayley pop up in NXT? They want to. Just to prolong their feud. Sasha and Bayley is coming at some point. I'm going to say SummerSlam. I don't care what the reports say. I think dragging it out any longer than that would be dumb. They got to move on at some point from Bayley as champion. She's had it was bad early on. She's gotten a lot better. She's had some good moments in the last couple of months. The Tamina match was fucking terrible. Her reign has gotten better. She's getting better in the role, and having her with Sasha really does help. But they're risking making Sasha look like a loser the more they position her as a lackey for Bayley. And I know people don't really think that, because they know what Sasha is capable of, but she hasn't held the real championship aside from this one, like a singles women's championship in over almost 3 years, since the summer of 2017 when she lost in 8 days to Alexa Bliss. So I think, that time's coming. Hopefully it is SummerSlam, but this is a great way of prolonging it, because they're really, they could have Bayley defend against more people, but really, who else is there left? She's beaten Lacey. She's beaten Naomi, which I don't know what the hell happened to her. She's beaten Dana Brooke, and they were trying to build her up. Who gives a fuck? Dana Brooke is just not that good, and she's not interesting at all. So, thankfully, they're not going in that direction. At least it doesn't seem they are. She's beaten Alexa Bliss. She's beaten Nikki Cross. She has beaten literally everyone on that show. Almost everybody. And Tamina included. I didn't even really want to see that match, and she beat Tamina, too. So, I think this is a great way to kind of take a detour from the Sasha-Bayley feud, which they teased more tension here, too. Because Bayley, I think, took Sasha out of the ring, or they had some form of miscommunication in this match on the show. So they're clearly still building towards the match, but this is a nice little detour to give them back the belts they never really should have lost in the first place. And the belts mean more around their waists than it does Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross, who are fine champions. They're entertaining to a degree. They're not interesting. There's really nothing there for me. They're clearly good friends, but there's really not much more to them than the whole bubbly personality, like, oh, we're baby faces, blah, blah, blah. There's really not much more to them than that. So I think Bayley and Banks holding the gold is the right call. You can have them face, the Iconics, who cares, but I know the Iconics, who I think were owed another shot after they got themselves disqualified. I'm not even really sure they were owed another shot, but as long as they don't drop the belts right back to the Iconics, as they did a year ago, this could be a positive. But you have the Iconics, Mandy and Sonya broke up. Again, NXT would be cool. I'm just trying to think of women's tag teams that they have done there. I know they have Dakota Kai and Raquel, but they're heels. The Four Horsewomen, Marina Shafir and Jessamine Duke. We haven't seen them in the ring in a while. They've been appearing in the crowd at the PC, but that's about it. Yeah, maybe Tegan and Mia, or Tegan and Shotzi, or whatever. There's a couple different pairings you can go with there. That would be interesting. But I thought it was a good match. Good result. I'm happy actually with it. I was not expecting it, but I'm happy with it. I'm glad they're the new tag team champions. And we'll see where they go with it. So I thought overall this was a pretty good episode of SmackDown, aside from the Miz, Morrison, and Braun Strowman stuff. I thought that was just fucking trash. But I thought overall it was a good show. Otis and Corbin served a purpose. I thought the Lacey and Sonya match was once again very good. Bryan and AJ had a good verbal exchange. The Gulak Styles match was great. The six-man tag team match was what it was, with the right result. And the Sheamus Jeff Hardy segment to kick off the show was also very good and effective in setting up the Backlash bout for next weekend. So, looking forward to Backlash. First and foremost, though, looking forward to NXT TakeOver in your house this coming Sunday on the WWE Network. Check out my full written review of that show, hopefully either tomorrow night or on Monday on nextairwrestling.net. As far as what's coming up here on the channel in the coming days, we have a WWE Break It Down review tomorrow with R-Truth, which is exciting. And then Monday we have, I the WWE 24 review of the Ric Flair 24 going up, I think, tomorrow. I don't know if I'll watch it first thing tomorrow. I may wait until after TakeOver to watch it when it airs on the network. But I should be reviewing that for Monday as well. So a lot to look forward to here on the channel. All the more reason to like this video, drop a comment, share the video, and subscribe to the channel for more content. As well as, like I said, subscribe and hit that notifications button to be notified every time a new video is uploaded. Until next time, guys, have a great rest of your weekend. I'm Graham G. Matthews, and I'll catch your ass down the road.